Welcome, everyone. My name is Nora Bassett, and I will be your moderator for this webinar.
Nora, can you hold one moment, please, while people enter?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
It's
I
such
will give you a cue to
start early.
participants are entering. We have 12 participants. Nora, you have the green light. We're rolling.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nora Bassett, and I will be your moderator for this webinar this evening. We've been invited to this panel discussion by Rhonda Mako, a wonderful friend of mine. Ms. Mako is a successful lawyer. She's also a teacher, teaching leadership, business, ethics, and entrepreneurship. And now she is the author of a very thought-provoking book entitled A Yearn to Discern, with a podcast coming out very soon in October. She defines discernment as follows: having the ability to sift through different types of information, consistent adversity, and potential threats in life, while consistently making appropriate decisions, rational judgments, and proper decisions that propel you forward with the steadfast purpose of improving your life and ultimately improving the world around you. Rhonda, before we get involved with our program, could you say a few words about what you envision happening tonight?
Sure. And thank you so much, Nora, for that introduction, and thank you for participating. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in tonight. We really appreciate it. We want to make sure that this is meaningful for you. And thank you to all the panelists who are on tonight. I just want to say that when I asked all the panelists to participate, it was very easy. They said yes very quickly. And that's because we want to make sure that we impart whatever information we have to you to help everyone navigate the different issues that they're dealing with as we continue to navigate this global pandemic. So my theme for tonight is to just have a vision of navigating all these issues by first talking about self-care, which is first and foremost, then to talk about caring for others, because we can't care for others unless we care for ourselves. Then protecting our families and loved ones, then empowering those families, and then also legacy. So if you can just envision that, that's really what we want you to do and discern as you make any decisions that will affect those areas in your life. So this is something that I believe is important, and our panelists will speak to those issues, whether it's navigating through a new school year, which we all are uncertain about, or just protecting your assets. We're here for you, and this is what this webinar is all about. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. So again, our topic for tonight is discerning in a post-pandemic or post-COVID-19 world. The issue tonight is the fact that we have overwhelming stress, anxiety, and fear that people are experiencing every day as a result of this global pandemic. The purpose of this workshop, for this webinar this evening, is to really look at how we can face COVID-19 in a rational manner and prepare ourselves to move forward. And how can we make good, safe, informed judgments and decisions during these uncertain times? Some of the topics you will hear this evening will possibly be estate planning, how to stay healthy, life and health insurance issues, what we should discuss with our children to keep them safe, how COVID-19 is affecting us on a day-to-day basis, and of course, how discerning is critical now more than ever. So let's get started. I want to begin with our very first panelist, who will begin with the topic that Rhonda mentioned, which is self-care. A very dear friend of mine, Dr. Michelle Reed. Dr. Michelle Reed is a board-certified family medical physician, public speaker, and bestseller author. She serves as the owner and medical director of MS Family Medical Healthcare, which is a holistic practice that serves 2 locations, one in Garden City, Long Island, and also one in Rosedale in Queens. Dr. Michelle's book, Mentally Fit, Physically Strong, The Fit Doc's Guide to Real Life, Real Fitness, Real Health, is a bestseller on Amazon. So, Dr. Michelle, I'm going to call you Fit Doc.
All right, Nora.
All right, Fit Doc. We're in a pandemic. And I know I have heard you speak so many times. I've even attended one of your workshops, like to stay fit. But how would you explain to us, how should we do this during a pandemic? Stay healthy, stay fit. How would we do that?
So first of all, I'd like to thank Rhonda very much for this platform to talk about something that's very near to dear to me, because I am a COVID-19 survivor, and people are coming up to me and say, well, you're a COVID-19 survivor. How did you get COVID-19? So I got COVID-19 because guess what? I'm not immune to getting sick. I'm just like everybody else. But the point is the preparation that got me to the point that I didn't have to get hospitalized. Because if you think about it, as a doctor, people are coming in and out of the office. We got exposed to everything. So many people came into the office and we're sending them straight out in the ambulance because they were having respiratory distress. So as a doctor, we get exposed. But as a human being, and as a mom, as a daughter, as a aunt, as a niece, I made sure that I practice what I preach. So some people like to call it self-care. I like to say making yourself a priority and putting you on your calendar. Everybody walks around with their smartphones, or they have their planners and they're writing everything in their planner. But when was the last time that you put yourself on that calendar? Nora, I'm gonna toss it back to you. So, so we have to lead by example. So I'm not going to tell you to do anything that I'm not going to do for myself. So I put myself on that calendar. Yes, the doctor does go to the doctor. I encourage you to go for your physical. Every year you should be going for a physical. Just before we started this webinar, I was talking to a patient who is above the age of 50 and has not gone for a colonoscopy. And we already know, I mean, everybody is devastated, not just in the United States, not just in Anderson, which is also my dad's hometown, the same hometown as Chadwick Boseman. Throughout the world, people are devastated because we lost a true superhero who, despite the fact that those 4 years he was undergoing treatment for colon cancer, he continued to give us the purpose, his purpose, which is a gift from God, throughout his treatment, throughout surgery, throughout chemo, throughout radiation. So if he was able to do that, why can't we do the same thing? And that's something that I really, truly instill, because it starts with us taking care of ourselves, putting ourselves on the calendar, making that appointment to go for that colonoscopy, because originally it was at age of 50, now it's at 45, and many of us are above the age of 45, so we should be going for that colonoscopy. As a female, yes, we should be going for our well women checks. We should be checking our breasts, even though they're saying don't check your breasts. But we know things can happen from year to year if we're not personally examining our breasts and we wait to go to the doctor. And if you're a man, let's face the reality. Nobody likes anything going up any hole of their body. But at this point in time, if you have to go for an internal exam as a male to get checked for prostate cancer and to get screened for colon cancer, that's the only thing that I ask of you. So all of us need to put ourselves as a priority, because that's the first thing to make sure everything is fine. So we can not only just fight COVID-19, but anything that comes our way, especially now at this time, but maybe 2 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, because our bodies will be a lot healthier if we do everything that we're supposed to do. Because we take our cars to get car washed. We take our car to get the oil change and the tires rotated. So we need to put that same energy into this body, this temple, because we only get one temple. And in the Bible it says, have they not known that their body is their temple? So let's take care of us first.
Wow. Thank you so much, Michelle. I love that. I just want to say this, that hearing you speak, this is the interesting thing, and Rhonda, you're going to hear me as I'm saying this to Michelle and to the audience. This is the thing about discernment. See how subtle it is? The entire conversation was telling me to discern between what I choose to do and what I am not doing. But she never said the word discernment.
Right.
And that's the thing about how we get lost with not using discernment, because it's so subtle, you can just kind of like overlook it. But that message was so powerful. That's stuck in my mind as.
That means I don't have to say anything else for the rest of the night?
No.
That's Nora.
I have to ask you this. Because you shared with us that you had COVID-19. And although it's not a pleasant thing to talk about, you know, there are reports that are coming out that are saying that even when you have it and you're over with it, that it continues on, that there are some experiences that people are having. You know, we didn't expect that. Talking about preparing for uncertainties, how do you prepare for not knowing that this doesn't end, and what exactly does it mean that it doesn't end? Can you address that?
Well, one of the things that we've noticed, especially in the doctor's office, we're seeing a lot more people coming in, not because of COVID, but for COVID and mental illness, anxiety, depression. They're scared to leave the house. I'm doing telemedicine because there's so many patients that don't want to physically come into the doctor's office. And as a doctor and as someone who has their own private practice, we have gone through so many different protocol changes to make sure that we not only protect ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I'm talking about my staff, but also our patients. So from the moment you make a doctor's appointment, yes, it's on the phone or yes, it's on the computer, you do not walk in my office checking at the front desk. You sit in your parking lot and you call, we check in, do the copay, we tell you when to come in. Sometimes we escort you straight into the exam room, and that's where everything happens. And if we need a urine sample, we'll have you go to the bathroom and then you come right back, we draw your blood right there. And then when you leave, we just have you go straight out the door. You don't stop in for checkout. So going to the doctor's office is a totally different experience. And I want people to feel comfortable, because as a doctor and as a business owner, as a Black female business owner, I had to shut down my business. And we already know that 5% of doctors are African-American doctors. And we know too that African-Americans and even Latinos, we like to go to people of color who look like us because we feel that they're going to take better care of us. So yes, you might call my doctor's office and maybe you might not be able to see me, but at the same time, you might have to wait on the phone. And people are complaining because sometimes you do have to wait, but we have to show patience. And that's part of discernment too, is showing patience, not just with ourselves, but other people. Because at this point in time, everybody is anxious. So anxiety is up. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Jen has to say about that. Depression is up. People are stressed because of their finances. And if you think about it, on average, people have gained over 20 to 25 pounds during this time of being on pause and quarantine. When, if you think about it, if we had thought about taking better care of ourselves to build up our immune system, we would be in a lot more healthier state than we are right now. So the experience is going to be a totally different experience than it was before. And as far as having the effects, we don't know the long-term effects of COVID-19. We only know the effects that have happened over the past 6 months. And as someone who went through it, I love to run. Rhonda and I run marathons. I've run 3 marathons. At this point in time, I can barely run a mile. I can sometimes be sitting and patients say the same thing. They're like, oh, I get short of breath. But I describe it as, I feel like I can't take a breath and I have to do a gasp and a double gasp. And then finally I can breathe. But COVID-19 affects every organ system of your body, from the brain, the nervous system, to the eyes. We've had patients losing eyesight, having intermittent blindness. Some cases have been permanent, but of course you're not going to hear that because no one wants you to get upset. But from talking to my doctors, friends throughout the country and the world, that's the feedback that we're getting. Loss of hearing, ringing of the ears. Some people have lost the sense of smell and taste, and for others, it hasn't come back yet.
Wow.
And the breathing, especially if you have any underlying issues like asthma or congestive heart failure or any type of obstructive disease or emphysema, we're seeing that those people are having more complications of trying to go back to their regular life because your body is not the same. I still have periods of intermittent palpitations where my heart just races. And as a runner, my heart rate is normally in the upper 60s or the lower 70s. And I could just be sitting minding my business or laying in bed and my heart just starts racing. And somebody's like, oh, you're anxious. No, I'm not anxious. I know that God will take care of me, whatever situation that I'm going through, but it's not anxiety. It's COVID-19. So yes, I want people to feel and to be aware of what can happen, but our life has to go on and we have to be able to adapt to what type of life we have to have right now going through COVID-19. And I know, like I said, Jen is going to help us with that because I have so many patients that are going through anxiety, can't sleep. We're seeing people coming in asking for sleeping pills, the finances. I'm looking forward to hearing from Amina and Sandra because those things, not everybody plans ahead. And it would be good if we had generational wealth, but I'm having patients that are dying and they have no healthcare proxy, they have no wills, and family members are trying to figure out where do they go from there. Because for us, life goes on. We're going to miss you. We love you. But how do we pick up the pieces once you're no longer part of our life?
Excellent. Excellent, excellent, Michelle. You hit on so many points. Again, when we talk about discernment and making the choice to adapt, some people don't really believe that change is a good thing. And so they want to stay with the traditions. They're traditional people and they want to stay the old-fashioned way because that's the strong, traditional, well-rooted, moralistic way to be. But with this situation, you're really saying that not changing could cost us our life.
It can. Because if you're going to go around and act like everything is fine, it's not fine. And even as someone who went through it, I was never that sick in my whole entire life. And I don't want anyone to go through with what I went through and what my family went through. I don't think it was worth it at all. But now we know a little bit more. But the scary thing is COVID-19 is a virus. It's rapidly mutating. And we're seeing that you can get it again. You can get a different strain, just like the flu, because it is a virus. So there is no cure. So yes, they're talking about maybe by the end of October, November, we might be able to start the first phase of vaccinations. But keep in mind, we can't rush into things. We have to make sure that things are happening so we can all be safe. Okay. And I like to say we need to get uncomfortable so we can get to that point of being comfortable. Same thing going on right now. Our world has been topsy-turvy for months, unlike anything. People are like the new normal, but guess what? That's how life is. Life has never been normal for me. I don't know about you all, but my life has never been normal. So you want to go ahead and call it a new normal? Go right ahead. But this is my life. The ups and the downs, don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But that's been life. And that's been especially the challenges that we've gone through, especially the challenges that our ancestors have gone through. So I think my mantra is I'm stronger than I think I am. And that's what keeps me going.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michelle. Wonderful, wonderful information to share and very motivational and inspiring too. Let's move on to Jen because Jennifer, I think you have some wonderful things that you will also share. So ladies and gentlemen in the audience, our next speaker who will start to really dig into those issues of caring for other people. We have Jennifer Aria.
Close, Orellana.
Oriana, I just wanted to see how you were going to say it. Jennifer Oriana. Jennifer is a New York certified school psychologist with 18 years of experience. She works with the Valley Stream School District in Long Island, where her role is the school psychologist in a very complex and multifaceted environment. Her areas of specialty include disruptive behavior disorders, parent engagement, teacher collaboration and consultation, and assessment of culturally and linguistically diverse students. She covers the whole span of where our issues often come from. Jennifer, talk to us about where do we end up as the people that are trying to take care of other people with this thing?
Well, thank you, Nora, for that introduction. And thank you, Rhonda, for having me be part of this panel. I'm really excited to be here. I think that this is a very timely and needed webinar. So I'm very grateful to be here. So I think that Dr. Michelle definitely covered a lot of what I want to say. So I think we're on the same page there. And, you know, we need to think about where we've been. And I think, you know, Dr. Michelle definitely covered it, but I have to start by saying that I think we're incredibly resilient people. And sometimes we don't stop to think about how this pandemic has affected us as people, our families, our children in particular, because that's obviously my area of expertise and interest. And so just to kind of go through it so that if we have a sense of where we've been, we get a sense of what can we do to sort of mitigate some of that and how do we now rebound and support our families through this next transition. So if you think about this pandemic and what it's done for many of our children and families, you know, at the forefront has been obviously illness. And for some of us, some folks who've been ill or who've had family members be ill, that has been very traumatic and who are still in that recovery phase. You know, with that illness has also come, you know, unfortunately, the loss of loved ones. So many of our families have sustained loss, and with loss comes grief and bereavement. And you have to think in this time, many of our families weren't able to grieve and bereave their families in their traditional ways, you know, and honor our loved ones. So, you know, we start there and start thinking about that. You know, other impacts have included the financial hardships. Many of our families have been furloughed. Businesses have been shut down. You know, we have families who've disproportionately been affected, like our Black and Latino families. So it really has been very, very significant. You think about, you know, our children, they've experienced something they've never experienced before, which is the shutdown of schools. And with that came tremendous social isolation for them. You know, as human beings, I like to say we are meant to be connected and to be engaged and to have all of those social experiences. And the quarantine really affected children in ways we had never imagined. So they now became socially isolated from so many of their peers. And that has had a profound impact. And so you take all of that and what do we see? We now see this tremendous increase in anxiety and stress. Well, no wonder, because I mean, if you think about all that we've endured, it certainly would lend itself to those increases in those areas. So you know, I always say we are resilient because we've been through so much, but for some families, they are still going through it. They're not there yet. Maybe they haven't, you know, overcome some of these, you know, impacts, but certainly I think it's been tremendously difficult.
Jen, can I just, I have a couple of things that are on your mind that I'm going to inject, and I hope that I know that you'll respond to them. Yeah, get ready. This is it. All right, now here you go. Is that I love the fact that you mentioned culture and the impact of how people respond to this situation based on the cultural lens. And one of the things that I kind of heard it when Michelle was speaking, and I'm hearing it as you're speaking. Do you find that in Black and Brown communities that there's an expectation, especially of women, to be strong, no matter what this situation is, to be strong, handle it? In our communities, people depend on us to kind of lead and be there no matter what. So my question is, if I am under this extreme stress, anxiety, bordering depression, I mean, are we now just going to, as a culture, say, oh, you know, we don't even want to say people get depressed? Like, I don't know. Talk to me.
So, I mean, you're talking about stigma, right? And we know that it exists. And mental health stigma is something that, I mean, even in the early, we're really working hard, even in elementary school, to teach children about mental, you know, well-being and mental health, because there is such a stigma. And I think particularly in communities of color. I happen to work in Valley Stream, which is a Black and Brown community. And so I am very fortunate to be working with such incredible families, but there is a stigma because, you know, it's not seen as something you should take care of yourself. You should be strong enough. You should deal with this, you know, and just get over it. Just kind of move on. It'll be okay. And I think that what I hope is that during this time, and there's with conversation and with people really being honest about their needs. And I think we have, you know, celebrities and other people who are out there really on these platforms and expressing their own, being honest about their own mental health issues, you know. So I even encourage when I students, I put up photos of, you know, celebrities and musicians, and I say, what do they all have in common? And they say, oh, they're rappers. Oh, they make a lot of money. They're famous. And I say, yes, but they also suffer from a mental illness. So really trying to break down the stigma, especially for young people, so they see like, having, you know, being anxious or being diagnosed with depression doesn't define me. It is part of who I am, and I have to learn how to navigate it, but it's not defining me as a human being. And I can still be successful and I could still make an impact in this world, but I need to take care of that part of me, because if we are not whole, if we are not mentally stable, there's an impact, you know, it has an impact on all areas of our life, our health, our social life, our physical life. So it is, I like to say it's in the umbrella of health. You know, it shouldn't be this separate thing. It's part of, just like you take care of your physical health, you absolutely have to take care of your mental health. They go hand in hand in my book.
Excellent. I'm going to take a risk here and ask you to venture into another area. How can we accept support from others when we're staying at a distance from each other?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, if we're relating to children or families, I'm not going to go both ways. But if we're thinking of, you know, of children, we can start there. You know, I think that really understanding and identifying when a child might need support. And I know that can be particularly difficult for parents sometimes to really say, like, something might be going on with my child, but, you know, really thinking about changes, especially during this time. You know, we know what our children's typical behavior is like, but if you start to see things like an increase in irritability, you know, for, let's say, an elementary school child, withdrawal or regression in behaviors, you know, for maybe preteens or teenagers, sort of, you know, just sadness or prolonged periods of, you know, crying. So anything that seems out of the norm. What I want to say is that schools have been preparing very diligently for the reentry of children. And I like to think that that could be a first step. You know, there are mental health specialists in schools. So that could include a school psychologist like myself, that might include a social worker or even a guidance counselor, who are there to support families. And oftentimes families don't know that they can do that there are people at your disposal who are willing and ready to help. So I think, the first line would be really talking to classroom teacher, having that parent reach out to that teacher to say, I'm noticing some differences at home. Do you notice them too? Can we talk? So really maintaining that open line of communication and then seeking support within a school. Now, some families might not feel comfortable doing that. They don't want to air their dirty laundry. They want to be private and personal. And so certainly we need to respect that. But really talking to a child's pediatrician, and saying, I'm concerned, here's where my, where I think some difficulties might be residing. What do you suggest? Can you make some recommendations for, a mental health provider? But I absolutely think that if parents can recognize and really get in there and do a lot of prevention work, it pays off. It really does, because we're really building that skill set and the capacity for children to navigate the world. And so we want to give them all the support that they might need.
Excellent. Now, I know you have some slides that you prepared. I would like for you to share them with us, because I would like to just kind of get that information finalized and kind of just run through it again.
Okay, so we didn't talk a lot about this, but I will say that the final thought is maintaining that open and honest communication. And when I say that, it's as we talk about reentry for children and they're going back into school, remembering to talk to them, to create those safe spaces, to really hear from them what they need as they're reentering, so that you're preparing. Preparation is key. And you really need to get them in a space where they're able to navigate their new school norm, because it is a new norm and it's different. I went back to work 2 days ago and today was our first day receiving children. It is different, but it is manageable. And if children are prepared, they're ready to face and walk into those buildings with smiles on, although you don't see them under those masks, but you see those eyes shining bright and they are ready to come into the building. When we talk about this new school norm, it's really creating a structure. Children thrive in structure, and that's what they've been missing for these months, that structure, that routine. So really preparing them is critical. Having those conversations, getting them ready, talking to them about what it's going to look like, showing them videos of what it might look like. Contacting that school and saying, can you give me some information? Do you have videos? What can I show my child so when they walk into the building, they feel at ease and that anxiety has really decreased for them? And really, and I think Dr. Michelle said it best, really caring for ourselves. If we know that we've gone through so much, we owe it to ourselves to take care of ourselves so that as we re-enter and navigate this uncertain time, we're making good decisions because we're healthy, not just physically, but we're healthy emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Can I just interject real quick, Nora, if you don't mind? I just want to ask Jennifer one particular question with respect to the schools. And, as a parent, I mean, we're talking about discernment, right? But at the end of the day, you have whatever model your school is going to implement, whether it's a hybrid, whether it's in person or online. And you as a parent obviously have to make the ultimate decision as to what is going to be the model you choose.
Absolutely.
And what happens when that model you choose as a parent is a model that your child is not going to be happy with, because you know your child, but then you have this fear of, so for example, if you have that child who likes the interaction and is very social, but you say, listen, we're doing online. How do you discern and make the right choice? And when you do make whatever choice, the child has to live with that. So what kind of communication needs to be had there?
That's a great question, Rhonda. And I think, certainly most parents have made a decision by now, but there are some that are still up until the 9th hour, they're really still not sure. And that's communication. I think if you are talking not at your child, I think we do a lot of talking at children, and we need to listen. Let their questions guide some of that conversation. So they may have questions. Why did you decide this? Really giving them the facts. I think when children are given facts and they're given real information, it makes sense to them. And it obviously has to be developmentally appropriate, right? But talking to them and saying, you know, and maybe the decision is because you live with, you know, a grandpa who has a pre-existing condition. You have to say, you know, this is the time, and I think this is a golden opportunity for us to grab hold of this wonderful opportunity have to talk about shared humanity and compassion. What better time to talk about it and for children to learn about it? And so if you're telling your child, you know, look, I know it's a tough decision, but I'm doing this because of A, B, and C. Can you understand why? Let's talk about it. How do you feel about it? And work through that. Give your child that space. I love to call it that emotional space for them to say, I'm upset, I'm disappointed, and then make a plan. Okay, I see that. What are you most upset about? How can we put things in place to help support you? So maybe they're saying, I'm not going to see my friends.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's make a plan for how you can stay socially connected. Because for children, that's a big part of wanting to re-enter. I want to see my friends. I want to be at recess with them. I want to, you know, talk to them. So let's make a plan for that. So if families have to make those tough choices of remote only for a while, give your children a voice. When they have a voice and they feel it's listened to, they feel they matter, and they feel empowered, they're more likely to engage in that conversation with you than to shut down and not want to hear the rationale for the decision making.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for asking that question or making that point. Jen, the perspective that you have is so unique, because although it's clearly, I mean, in terms of your education and your training and your professionalism, you're following what the standards are. But at the same time, you have given an insight and consideration into culture, which I watch the news and I watch these specials all the time on TV that talk about COVID-19 and things that you should consider. And a lot of times they just don't talk about culture, and especially the culture of Black and Brown communities. And so this insight and this discussion that we're having tonight adds that missing piece, which I think is very, very valuable, because that's what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I thank you so much for that. I know that you have another slide. I want you to just run us through it. The audience will be able to have access to this information at a later date, but if you could walk us very quickly, I would appreciate that.
Sure, you got it. Okay, so I just put up a list of resources. I mean, this is no means exhaustive, but I think just some areas for families to get some really great information. So the National Association of School Psychologists has great COVID-19 family and educator resources. It's my go-to. I'm a professional, my professional organization and affiliation. Child's Mind Institute, which is actually in New York City, that does offer supports to families from evaluations to therapy to assessments. They also have great information. CASEL, if you're an educator, you know all about CASEL because they are at the forefront of SEL, social emotional learning. They too have some resources. Second Step, I've included that in there. Some school districts do use it. It's a violence prevention program, but it certainly has some resources. The fifth one, it's the School Mental Health Training Resource Center, which is having webinars for families on a monthly basis. So you could just log in, they're free, and they'll touch on various topics. And I think it's incredibly empowering to hear from other parents, because they might be thinking what you're thinking, having the same questions, and it's just a great place to gather information and to also just feel supported, like you're not alone, like I'm not the only parent thinking or feeling that, and give you just a wealth of information. And the last one is at UC Berkeley. So it's a Greater Good Science Center, and they have wonderful, wonderful parent-friendly and information for families as they're navigating these times. So all of them are wonderful, but I encourage families to really join in on some of those webinars, because I think they can really give you some information that you might be just needing and not knowing that you need it at that moment. So I hope that those will be helpful, and I know that they'll be included on the link when this webinar is sent to our participants.
Great, thank you so much. Perfect. Jennifer Oriana.
Excellent, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am loving the information that's being shared right now, and I want to move on to another aspect of what we're discussing this evening. We've been looking at taking care of ourselves and our families in a physical, psychological, and emotional way. Now let's look at it from a financial side. Because in order to do many of the things that we're talking about, we have to face the reality that there is a financial element to this. So we got to look at what does it take to financially protect, develop, and have a quality future for ourselves and our families. I'd like to take this time to introduce our next speaker, Sandra Salmon, and she's going to be speaking about protecting our families. Sandra is an insurance broker, financial advisor, and she has worked in the insurance and investment field for over 10 years, which is always an effective and is always effective when advising clients in their needs. Sandra specializes in insurance and financial investments for companies, individuals, and seniors. Life and health insurance, estate planning, and long-term care planning are just a few of her specialties. Sandra. Please take us into this other aspect of caring for ourselves, caring for our families, and protecting those that we care about. Sandra.
Well, thank you very much, Nora, for that introduction. I'd like to thank Rhonda for having this vision and allowing us to get together to reach out to everyone to discuss what I think a lot of people are thinking about, and I'm just not sure where to turn and where to get some advice. So the first point I want to make is that I try to remind everyone, your health is your wealth. And when I say that, I mean, if you're not healthy, you can't go out and work, you can't go out and make money, you can't go out and protect your family. So you have to look at it from a point of view, make sure I'm healthy, which goes back to Dr. Reed's comments and Jennifer's comments about self-care. But in order to do that, you want to make sure that you have the proper health insurance in place. Unfortunately, there are still individuals that are walking around without health insurance, and that is so dangerous at this point in time, especially with COVID. New York State has allowed for special enrollment periods for individuals who did not enroll in health insurance, who are not working for companies, and do not have coverage through their employers. They are still able to get some health insurance, protect themselves, protect their families. So I hope that everybody will reach out to, whether it's myself or someone like me that can help them, even call New York State of Health. They will be able to tell you about the different deadlines, the special enrollment dates that are available to make sure you put your health insurance in place. Once your health insurance is in place and you are now working, you can now make sure that you're protecting your family. Oftentimes, people will go out and they'll buy a $1,000 cell phone. I can tell you how many people have a cell phone. Unfortunately, they don't go out and protect their families just like they protect that cell phone. They'll get insurance on that cell phone and they don't get insurance on themselves. So I'm going to give an example. We'll say that you had an ATM machine in your house, and that ATM machine gave you $3,000 every 2 weeks without any fail. Wouldn't you want to protect that ATM machine so that you will get money every 2 weeks without fail? Well, what you have to realize is that you are that ATM machine for your family. You are bringing in a paycheck for your family. And if you're not protected and something goes wrong, then what is going to happen to your family? It doesn't take a lot of time. We're in, September is what's known as special enrollment for life insurance. September is Life Insurance Awareness Month, which I think is very interesting because that's when kids go back to school. So when your kids are going back to school, you're protecting your kids. You want to protect yourself so that you can protect your family. There are a lot of different types of life insurance available, a lot of different types of disability insurance, which protects your income available. Just take the time to reach out, speak to someone so that they can guide you and, tell you what the proper type is for your particular situation. Everyone's need is not going to be the same. Everyone's not going to need the same particular type of insurance. You have to investigate to find out what is going to be appropriate for you and your family. What I also want to mention is that when it comes to insurance, I get told often that, you know what, I have insurance through my company, my employer. So therefore, I don't need to have my own separate insurance. What I want to do is give an example. In this day and age where the pandemic is around and a lot of people are being laid off, they're losing their jobs, which means that when you lose your job, you lose those company benefits. Those company benefits also include that life insurance. So if you lose your job today, tomorrow something happens to you, your family has nothing in place to care for you. They have nothing in place to pay for funeral expenses. They have nothing in place to buy those flowers that you might want for that funeral expense. They have nothing in place to make sure that you're going to stay in that home that you were in when your parents was alive, when your mother, when your father. So it's important for you to just take the time. When it comes to insurance, nobody likes to discuss it. It's not pleasant. I understand, I get it. I feel the same way. But if something goes wrong, I'm always happy that I have coverage in place. That I know for sure. Now, when it comes to COVID-19, which is a question I'm getting a lot nowadays, individuals are thinking that because they've had COVID-19, they're uninsurable. That is incorrect. Every insurance company has different options in terms of how they will look at an individual and what's called underwrite an individual who's had COVID-19. Now, typically, the majority of insurance companies that we're seeing, they will say that you have to be free 30 days, COVID-19, no symptoms, and then they will be happy to take an application. But do not write yourself off because you've had it. Do not think that you cannot protect your family with insurance just because you've had COVID-19. There's also other conditions that individuals will sometimes say, oh, I've had diabetes. Just because you've had diabetes doesn't mean that you can't get life insurance. There are different types of life insurance. There are also a form of insurance that's called a guaranteed issue insurance, which means that they don't ask about your health, because when it comes to life insurance, the prime factor in getting coverage is when you're in good health. And if you have some health issues going on, there are certain things that are going to happen, but you still can get insurance. So just take the time to investigate. And I would say to everyone that's listening, when you're on the call, you reach out to your family and friends, do not leave the month of September without reviewing, investigating, and making sure that you're properly insured.
Great. Wow. Excellent. I'm so the last point of the guaranteed insurance and pre-existing conditions, because, you know, one of the things we were hearing when we first started hearing about people having COVID-19 was that a lot of people were in that age bracket of, I think it was 60 and over, and they were people who had pre-existing conditions. Some of them were at home, and then some of them were in nursing homes. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is a concern, and it's very common in our communities for people to have pre-existing conditions. I want to extend this question a little and ask you, in terms of that same population, that's 60 and over, if we're talking about long-term care, is that something that, like, should everybody have long-term care as well as your general health care policy and your life insurance, or should that only be for people who, you know, are prone to certain illnesses? Long-term care. Can you speak about long-term care?
Sure. Let me mention with long-term care, New York State actually has a slogan with long-term care, and New York State's slogan is "Don't leave your 40s without it." So it doesn't mean that you wait to your 60s to put it in place. The earlier that you put the long-term care in place, the better off you are, because the less expensive it is. Long-term care is something that is really appropriate for anyone that has finances that they're looking to protect. It's not going to be appropriate for everyone. There are some health conditions that will disqualify someone from getting long-term care, So this is why it's recommending that you look into it when you're healthy. Do not wait until you become ill. If there's a diagnosis of cancer, depending on the type of cancer, I'll use breast cancer, for example. If you've had breast cancer and you're 5 months, not 5 months, 5 years or greater without any symptoms, any signs, testing negative, you will likely be able to get some type of coverage for long-term care. Um, Believe it or not, if you've had diabetes, if you have diabetes, and it's leading to complications with neuropathy or amputation, those are conditions that will prevent you from getting the long-term care. So that's why it's important to look into it beforehand. But the long-term care is very important to look into because the cost of a nursing home is over $14,000 a month. And someone could really go through their assets, lose their savings if they're not properly protected and insured.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I believe you have a slide for us. Do you have a slide for us to share? I'd like to see it now. And just if you can just walk me through it very quickly.
Sure. I just want everyone to know too, what they need to do is you need to evaluate your needs when it comes to the insurance products available. In order to protect your family, you want to make sure that you're looking at what's my income. If I were to make $100,000 for the next 10 years, my income that's $1 million. Some people will say, oh, I only need $100,000 of coverage. No, your income is $100,000 a year. If you're still working and your working potential is the next 10 years, that's $1 million that will be wiped away if something happens and you have kids that have to go to college, or you have children in college, or you have a mortgage. So you want to make sure you do the proper analysis as for how much insurance needs that you actually have. You also want to make sure that you are getting the right insurance, because there's different types of insurance. There might be term insurance that's good for a particular period of time. There might be permanent insurance, which means that as long as you live, if you go to 120, the policy is still there with you. So make sure you just do the proper investigation.
Great. Thank you so much. Cool information, and I think we learned something today. All right, everyone, we're going to continue on. And again, the financial issue is so important. We want to stay with this topic and continue with financial discernment. I'm going to ask that we look at our next stage, which is empowering our families. There it is. That's the slide I'm looking for. Empowering our families and growing our assets. I'm going to ask our speaker, Amina, to cover this material. So let me give you a little backup information about Amina. Amina Kennedy is an investment advisor and a secondary English teacher. Well, we know she's fantastic now. All right. Seeing the need for financial literacy across all walks of life, she became a licensed investment advisor, helping families make action plans for the future, including retirement needs and giving workshops to all ages. She takes the fear out of finance and works to change the generational wealth of hardworking families by arming them with the information to build their dreams. So, Amina, very, very, very important. And I would like for you to begin with an issue that has actually, it's a conversation that took place between the two of us. You said something about fear. Michelle has said, Michelle has said some things about fear. Jennifer has said some things about fear. Tell me what you say about fear. To be honest.
Well, thank you, Rhonda, for having us. Norm, so glad to be back with you again. We did a webinar not too long ago. And, you know, when we talk about fear, it's false evidence appearing real. And a lot of times, especially during COVID, we sat in our homes being fearful. And then we started watching the news. Now, when you start watching the news, obviously we know that people are having economic struggles right now. 40 million Americans have no homes, are like unemployed. They're worried about their homes, they're worried about their mortgages and things of that nature. And, you know, part of what keeps us from moving forward is that fear that we're stuck. And despite whatever situation you're in, you are never stuck. You just need to pivot and shift the ideals that you had behind whatever you're fearing. So I'm a teacher right now. I know Jen gave me a lot of hope talking about her experience, because I've been planning for two months trying to get back to school. And the one thing I keep saying is, like, I'm not scared. I just want to do it. And we need to start feeling that way about our finances. So right now, when it comes to COVID-19, a lot of people have either had their income decreased, like they cut hours, or they cut shifts, or maybe they had a second job. Like for me, I'm also a cheerleading coach. Right now, it's very much up in the air about what's going on with cheerleading and things of that nature. So the money that people were typically depending on may or may not be there. So now they're looking at their bills and they're like, okay, what am I going to do about this? So people are trying to make decisions about what to pay and how to pay it. And part of this too is because of COVID-19, from the economic standpoint, a lot of companies are started offering options to help you deal with COVID-19. So the one thing that I really want to say is that don't be scared to call. I think a lot of times when it comes to your finances, like the envelopes keep coming into the mail and you're stacking them, or you put them in a box, or you stick them in a drawer and you don't want to see them, because all it does is reinforce the lack that your mindset is already in. And we need to start really thinking about abundance, because we understand that what we think about grows. And it's the same thing when with your money. So with COVID-19 right now, like for example, if you have a mortgage, currently there are plenty of programs, especially if you have a federal mortgage. You can put your mortgage into a 180-day forbearance and then an additional 180 days extension. Right now, I think the one that they were running recently was that you had 4 months to just not pay. Like they were doing forgiveness. Now, a lot of people were like, well, oh, I have all this money. What do I do with it? The one thing that COVID-19 has really shown us is the importance of developing an emergency savings. Typically, especially if you're middle income, we typically depend on credit. You know, I need a new washing machine. I need to go get a new car. I need a bunch credit. But we haven't really gotten ourselves into a cash flow. We want to make sure that we're doing that. So when you're looking at things like your mortgage, maybe they gave you a break on the interest rate. Maybe they are giving you some forgiveness. Put some of that cash away. That money needs to start going into a savings. You want to start to have at least a 3 to 6 month emergency savings. And I know that might sound a little overwhelming, but if we're still taking part of all the things and all the elements that are being offered to you as a result of COVID-19, you need to call your credit card companies, because right now they are all, I would say majority, not all of them, a majority of credit card companies are offering you either a deferment or they are offering you a lower percentage rate, a lower monthly fee. So if you were paying maybe $200 a month towards your credit card, they might knock down your interest rate where you only have to pay half. That doesn't mean you have an extra $100. That means you have $100 to put into savings to float you if anything else in your life changes. In addition, right now, if you have a loan, a student loan, I'm definitely one of those people. If you have a student loan through the federal government, they gave us initially, was it 6 months? No, 3 months? 6 months forbearance, or like no payment. And now they've extended it to the end of the year. We're supposed to start in September, and now we're going to the end of the year. And those forgive payments actually go towards your 120 payment cycle. If you're in the payment, like based on your salary, if you have a payment based on your salary, even those months that you're not paying is actually going to help you pay off that loan a little bit sooner. So if you don't have to pay that bill, maybe you don't have that X amount of money for that bill, but now you have at least another 50 or another 100. So start putting that money into your emergency savings. Like Sandra, you really killed it talking about the foundation of your financial house, which is insurance, making sure that you are taking care of your responsibilities. God forbid something happens. But it's also really important to make sure that we're looking at ways that we can take some of those responsibilities down. And one of the ways you're able to do that is by making sure that you have your emergency savings all set up.
Amina, can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if it applies to everybody, but a lot of times with our being furloughed or laid off or fired, a lot of people lost their 401ks, or they're frozen, or they're sitting someplace. I don't know, does this fit into this conversation?
Yes, I definitely wanted to talk about that because so many people are transitioning jobs at this point. The one thing I always say is, if you had to clear up your desk and you took your pictures in your cup, take your money. That is not their money to keep. Your 401k is yours. Now, certain 401ks have requirements for vesting and things like that, but any money that you put into your 401k, that is your money. Don't leave it with that company. You want to roll it into your own private IRA, managed by whatever financial or investment advisor that you might have, someone like myself, and they will make sure that money is placed somewhere that's going to work to your benefit. Now, your needs are not the same as my needs. That means my investment strategy is not going to be the same as your investment strategy. Now, I'm knocking on 40, but that means I still have another 20 some odd years of work. So I don't have the same investment goals as someone who's 55. My goal is to grow. Theirs is to hold and save and make sure that their principal is maintained. That way, when they get to retirement, they have money. Part of the issue with 2008 for a lot of people was that they lost so much money in their 401ks that they weren't able to recover. Well, part of that was because they were probably too aggressive. I can be aggressive because I'm in a growth cycle right now when it comes to my investments, because I have time. And the thing that people don't understand about investing is that it's time in the market, not timing the market. So people are like, oh, so-and-so stock is doing great, let me give that money. And no, that's not, that's not what should be your guiding dynamic. What should be guiding you is what your investment objectives are. So depending on your age and your investment objectives determines what you should be investing in specifically. And now the other thing about the 401k is that the federal government has allowed people to take money out of their 401ks without penalties. And I am going to caution against that, guys. I know it might seem like, oh, but I need to pay this bill. But when you take money out of your 401k, what you are actually doing is removing the growth of that particular fund. So if I have $100,000 and I take out 10,000 to pay for something specific, now I only have 90,000 rotating in the market. So I'm missing out on more gains. And trust me, don't let anyone fool you. Rich people are still getting rich. They're still putting money in the market. So don't allow what you're seeing about, oh, the market's down, it's red, it's green, it's the bull guy's screaming. Don't let that skew the idea that people are still making money. So regardless of what the market is doing, as long as you are still in it, you don't lose money. So when people see that their 401ks go down, like the worst month was March for everyone's investment account, and everyone's best month was April. That's how quickly the market shifts. You're gonna have the ups and downs, but unless you take money out, that's the only way you lose the money. So it's really important that people understand that and not let the fear that they're hearing and that they're seeing on TV guide their ultimate decision, because we need to build assets as a people, as a culture. We need to start building assets, things that, not a liability. Liability, that Mercedes-Benz. assets, your mutual fund. Because as soon as you take that car off the lot, it's not worth what you paid for it. As opposed to your investing, even if you're investing $50 a month, as little as $50 a month, and you do that over the course of 30 years, you're still gonna have 6 figures easily. Now, $50, you spend that on coffee, which is the other thing that I wanna make sure that people understand is like, now is the time to start looking at your budgets. Like really start looking and seeing, do I need the Netflix account and the Hulu account and the HBO Go? Do I need 5 cable boxes in my house? Do I need to, spend money on coffee and eating out? Like Uber Eats will do you in. They upcharge so much, like you end up paying double from what you originally thought. So you have to start asking yourself, like I erased all those things off my phone because I was wasting money. You would look down, you'd be like, when did I spend $100 eating out 3 times on Uber Eats? It's ridiculous. So taking the time to look at your budget and kind of see the things that are really unnecessary. And that's, the pandemic was hard, the quarantine was hard, but I think it really allowed people to start examining elements about their life that they could change. So now is the time for us to start examining the things in our life that we can change. And maybe it's not that, daily run to Dunkin' Donuts, or maybe it's one less cable box. Those things can make a huge difference. So, as I go to like the final discerning thought, I think it's really important that people understand that number one, don't be scared to pick up that phone, call that loan, call that mortgage company. The people are super nice. They want to help you. The companies are genuinely creating these programs to help you. Now, some of them do, like Chase, but most are really willing to help you. And then you want to take a look at your budget. Let's start shifting our money into places that are actually going to work to our benefit, like our emergency fund. It felt good when I walked in to go get an oil change earlier this summer, and they told me I needed 3 new tires. I didn't have to charge it. That money was ready to go. And that felt really good to know that I had what I needed when I needed it, because it was an emergency. It was an unforeseen expense and I had it. And there's a lot of power in that. The other thing I want to make sure that people know is that we need to keep investing. Time in the market. We want to use the 3 Ds of investing. Diversify. The hot stock today may not be the hot stock tomorrow, so spread it out. You want to have discipline. Do not panic. Do not pull your money out. That's the only time you truly lose an investment is when you pull it out. And then dollar cost averaging. Even if you have had a decrease in your income, you need to still put something in the market, whether it's $50 or $100. Make sure that you're still participating in that cycle, because the only 2 things that are ever guaranteed about the market is that it'll go up and it'll go down. That's a stagnant. But you need to be a part of that. You need to take advantage of that. And I think for our community, we've been so distrustful for so long when it comes to banks and like, oh, now I'm going to put my money in the shoebox. Well, your money in the shoebox is not going to do much. God rest her soul. My grandma used to stash money everywhere. But just like Sandra was saying, she had one illness and her savings got wiped out because nursing homes are expensive and we didn't get that long-term care, things of that nature. So letting go of that fear, participating in the market, and know that, there are still people getting money. So why not get some for yourself?
Amina. Something else. You haven't changed. You really go. And you have so much information that's so valuable. And you're really talking about a shift in mindset about money. And that's big in our community. I thank you so much. I know that you have some slides. I know your slides are actually a summary.
Yes. Just basically kind of some of the things that I went over. And then, just the last thing, please take your money from your job.
Great. Yeah.
Because we know that a lot of companies are not, like, we see all these retail companies closing. And a lot of times, if they're not doing the right thing, they will use your money.
If you don't take it.
If you don't take it. So make sure that you take your 401k, depending on your age, will determine what your investment should be, whether it should be in an annuity, which you can draw income from in the long term, or if it's just a mutual fund where it continues to grow, or maybe you need to take a little bit and put it in a money market so that you have some more accessible cash. But do not leave your money with that company.
Now listen, everybody, all this information that Amina is giving you is going to be sent to you, so you'll have it, because this is something that I know you're going to have to hear it again and digest it. And I think one of the strongest points she's made is get somebody that you can talk to. Sandra said it, Amina is saying, get somebody that you can talk to who is an expert in this field and get some advice. One thing that COVID has proven to me is that you have got to pick up new skills. That's a major change. Learn, learn, learn. Not only learn about technology, learn about money. Learn about money, how to get it, how to keep it, how to spend it, how to increase it. So on that note, we're going to continue on. Thank you, my dear. It's such a pleasure to see you again and to work with you. I hope we're going to do this again sometime soon. We're going to continue on. And we're going to continue on with my friend and our sponsor for the program this evening, who, of course, you all know is Miss Rhonda Mako. And as I told all of you before, Rhonda is a very, very successful lawyer. And she not only is a legal person, but she's been a teacher of leadership and business and ethics and entrepreneurship. And now, as I said earlier, she has gone into the writing field and become an author of a very thought-provoking book entitled Yearn to Discern, which we've been talking about this evening. And she has plans to kick off a podcast in October that will continue this discussion and many of these smaller discussions that come up and have come up in your mind as you've been thinking about this issue, this topic of discernment. So look for her with her podcast. And right now I would like to ask Rhonda, I know you said, Rhonda, that it's very interesting to speak about or to know about discernment in a time like this. But I also think it's very important for us to deal with some of the things that you and I have been speaking about, which is that information concerning legacy, the information concerning estate planning, and information concerning financial documents that sometimes we don't necessarily have. So Rhonda, I'm going to ask that you take us through the final piece of legacy, estate planning, business documents, and anything that you think we should follow up with at this point. Rhonda.
Thanks, Nora, for that. Once again, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight, and thanks to all our panelists. I mean, the information was just amazing, and I'm sure we're going to continue this conversation after tonight. I just want to recap. So the theme that we're talking about here, and it was said throughout the panelists about self-care, also communication. That's a big piece of all of this. It's about communicating with ourselves, to our families, to those people we have to deal with, whether it's business, our people, our banks and schools, everything. I mean, communication is key. And a lot of times in times like this, when we are stressed and feeling a lot of anxiety, we freeze up. I mean, we stop communicating. We'll see the bills piling up and it just makes us fearful. And we really do have to get past the fear. So taking control of your emotions and not letting the fear run your life is really critical to all of this. And also that element of change. One of the things I just wanted to say is that, change is the only constant that we have. And it's clear to me in my practice and just my travels that there are a lot of people who do not want to change. They really want to get back to their life pre-COVID-19 in all respects. And that is a problem. And that's something that we have to talk about. Discernment is not sitting in a corner waiting for things to go back to the way they were. or letting your emotions take charge of everything. So the things that we talked about tonight are important because it makes you aware that we have to deal with things in a productive manner that's going to help ourselves, our families, the people around us, the people we have to deal with, so that way we can effectuate the change we're looking for. And also, at the end of the day, we want this to coincide with our purpose and what we're trying to accomplish in life. And that being said, when we talk about purpose, when you look at what we talked about tonight, the piece that I want to talk about is legacy. And that's very important. And that's something that, I mean, culturally, that's something that we really have to deal with and talk about head on, because, you know, years ago, my mother said something to me that still sticks in my head, and it bothered me. I was too young to really digest the meaning of what she said. But then when I thought about it years later, I realized what she was saying. You know, when we were struggling financially, my mom one time said, "I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to survive here." It was a situation where, you know, there was issues with mortgage and things of that nature. And I remember she said that, and we were able to get ourselves through, not the way we wanted to, but that whole concept of being here, surviving. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Being in survival mode is not living. I mean, there may be times when crises come up and we have to deal with it in a certain way, but that's not the way you're supposed to be operating on a permanent basis. Survival mode is not where it's at. So we have to get past that survival and really think about what we're trying to do here, what we want our legacy to be, what our purpose is. Also, particularly because we have other people to care for, most of us. And we need to really think about what it is we're trying to accomplish, what is our purpose. And so with that, you know, I always tell people, so let me just tell you this right now, since the pandemic has happened, my business has really been booming. And to a certain extent, I've been overwhelmed because people are coming to me with a lot of different issues that they should have dealt with before the pandemic. But listen, if you're dealing with it now, I'd rather you at least deal with it now instead of continuing to deny it. And part of that has to do with, you know, listen, when you experience a loss, you know, death has come to us because of COVID-19, and it has left people with things that now they have to deal with because the person who passed did not set up things the way that you might have wanted them to be set up, or you're digging for documents trying to figure out where things are going and what I need to do. So I'm getting a lot of that. And so, listen, what we need to do is think about taking an inventory of our assets. We have to do it in a way, again, I know everything is overwhelming. We're dealing with issues of school. We're dealing with so many different issues of bills and financial documents and things of that nature, but we really do have to think about our legacy, and that begins with understanding what our assets are. So listen, you just need to sit down for a minute. You need to find some time. Again, it is about discipline. It's about just sitting down and saying, you know what are my assets? Maybe that's a house, whatever your personal property is. Think about all of your accounts, whether it's mutual funds, whatever investments you have, any insurance policies, any bank accounts. You need to take an assessment of what your assets are. I always tell people that you are more valuable than you give yourself credit for. I personally always have people fill out a questionnaire so that way it can jog their memory on different assets that they might not consider to be assets. Trust me, you are worth a lot more than you think. So we need to do that. I mean, that's something that you can do right now. It's not something that you should do in 5 minutes. There might be something that you forget, but you need to just take some time over a couple of weekends or so and think about what those assets are. Also, if you are caring for someone, whether it's children, a parent, an aunt, uncle, sibling, whatever the case is, if you're that caregiver, you have to think about, you know, caring for them and thinking about what their assets are and talking to them about what they want to happen. I mean, that's something that's very important that you have to do. So taking an inventory of your assets and then thinking about how you want those assets to be distributed. You know, listen, I hate to say this, but it's true because I know people who've done this before. There are some people who actually think that they can take their money with them to the grave. I'm sorry, you can't do that. I mean, you have to think about distributing those assets. And, you know, we have to get out of selfish mode and say, you know, I'm just going to keep this all to myself. I'm not going to have a beneficiary on my bank account. I'm not going to put a beneficiary on my 401k or my pension or something like that. These are things that we need to check periodically to make sure that whoever we want these monies to go to, they're going to go to them. If you do not have a beneficiary on these different assets that you have, you're going to make your loved ones go through a process that is going to take them a while to get to that money. I mean, why give your prosperity hoops that they have to jump through in order to obtain your assets, which you cannot take with you? It's not logical thinking. And again, when we're talking about discernment, we have to think about these things. We can't think about what we're immediately doing. We have to think about, you know, what we want our loved ones to do and how we want our assets distributed. So let's think about goals and things of that nature. Even if we're talking about our business, we need to set up our businesses properly so that way, if we want our businesses to continue after we are gone, and listen, I understand nobody wants to talk about death. I get it, but I'm sorry, we have to talk about it. We do. So we have to think about these things. We have to sit down and we have to talk to someone. You need to speak to an estate attorney to talk about what your assets are, what you want them to do. You have to think about, there's 4 documents I tell people that they really need. 4 essential documents. You need a last will and testament. You should have a living will. You should have a healthcare proxy, and you should have a power of attorney. Those are the 4 essential documents. And then depending upon what other assets you might have, you might need other documents. It just depends on your particular situation. You need to sit down with someone to analyze where you are, what you're trying to accomplish, what you have, what you intend to have. Some of us have royalties. You know, if you're publishing, if one of your goals is to be in, you know, the movie industry, or you might write a screenplay or something, you never know. If that's one of your goals, we're talking about royalties. How do you want that to be? Who's going to get those royalties? We need to think longevity and not just think about the immediate. And now more than ever, because there are things that have happened during COVID-19 that we have to be aware of that we never wanted to really think about before. We have to get past the fear. And so it's very important to realize that. Another thing that you need to do is make a list of all the important people in your life. Not just the people that you care for, but the people you care about. You know, some of us want to, some of us want to, you know, make sure that our nieces and nephews get to college. If you've never been to college before, but you were able to gain some type of wealth and you want that wealth to be passed down generationally, you have to do something. Then put things in writing. You really have to do that. Once again, I know we don't want to think about things happening to us, but that's a reality of life, and we have to be honest about it and put it down on paper. Also, for health care purposes, we have to think about, you know, in the, you know, event something happens to us, God forbid, something happens where we cannot take health, we can't make health decisions for ourselves, we need to put somebody in charge who can do that for us. And we need to be realistic about who that person is. Listen, if you have someone who's emotional, who you know cannot carry out your wishes, that person should not be in charge of your health. I mean, again, this requires you to be honest about who you are, the people you love, what their shortcomings are, what their strong points are, so that way you can make the right decisions and put things in place. And then also, we have to think about our health, right? I mean, Dr. Michelle talked about that. I mean, it's a common theme that we talked about tonight. You really do have to pay attention to your health. Again, you know, COVID-19, is something that if you had an underlying condition, you were, more susceptible to probably getting it. And then there's other issues that go along with that. So we need to take control of our health. That's really an important thing. If you're not healthy, you're not able to take care of yourself, and you're not able to take care of others. You're not going to be thinking about longevity or legacy if your health is not, if you're not healthy, because there's other issues that now you have to think about that will dominate the conversation with you. So again, you have to think about these things so that way you can protect yourself, protect your assets, equip your family to, grow your assets and carry out whatever your mission is, your purpose. At the end of the day, all these topics that we're talking about has to do with you and your purpose. If COVID-19 taught us nothing else, and, certain things that have happened this year, 2020 has been a doozy, but it's all about perspective and how you look at it. Like I said, you can't look at it in a way where I'm so fearful, where I'm not going to do anything anymore, or, I'm so scared, I'm making these decisions based on fear. That's not what the lessons are supposed to be for this year. We have to think about it in a way where we discern. And remember, discerning is about making proper decisions, making judgments. We have to sift through a whole bunch of information. Amina was talking about, we see the news and we immediately get scared. We do. But again, we have to discern. We can't just go on Facebook or social media and take what we see as the gospel and then make decisions based on that. We have to be smarter than that, and we have to make decisions that are more appropriate for us based on different factors that we have to consider.
Excellent. Rhonda, excellent. I definitely have to apologize for limiting you, because I know that this is something you could talk about, for the 2 hours, as we have said many times. I mean, the times are changing. I think that all of us here realize that the discernment is about making a decision. Do we want to be a part of a future, or do we want to freeze in this block of time? And I think that anybody that's on this line tonight is literally, you're making the decision that you want to move forward. And here's a set of tools and some information that can be valuable and help you do that. Rhonda, listen, I'm going to ask that we look at our chat line and see if we've got some questions. We're going to stay with this conversation, but let's go to the chats and see if we have some questions from people out in the audience. Charlene, are you out there? Can you hear me?
I'm here and I don't see any questions yet, so please use the Q&A if you have questions for our amazing panelists.
Okay, great. All right. So what?
Nora, do you mind if I ask a question of one of our panelists? In particular, I want to address this question to you, Sandra. This is a question that I deal with all the time in my courses. I ask my students this all the time, and the answers that they give are usually polarizing in the class. And the question I have for you with respect to insurance is this. Would you insure your children?
Absolutely, positively, 100%, equivocally, yes.
Why?
And I say that because, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not going to insure my child. It's about the death benefit. No, it's not. It's about protecting your child. Your child could be ill at any point in time with a condition that will prevent them from getting insurance down the road. If you start off with a small policy that will grow with the child, they will have something for the future in the event that they become ill and cannot get additional insurance down the road. So it is very important that you look into that. A lot of, I hate to say it, but many years ago, a lot of individuals would take out insurance on their kids and the kids would be killed. And the insurance department steps in and they regulated as to how much insurance a family member could take out on a child. And the only one that can actually own the insurance on the child would be the mother or the father. I, as an aunt, cannot own an insurance on my niece or my nephew. That's frowned upon. That they look at very closely. I don't know if you guys are familiar with one of these reality TV shows called Sweetie Pies. It was on OWN recently, and Sweetie Pies is about a family that the Mrs. Robbie was a backup singer for Tina Turner and the Ikettes. And her son, this takes place in St. Louis, and this is real. This is not a made-up story. This is real life.
Mhm.
Her son went to jail for 10 years, okay, on robbery, bank robbery charges. Then she had another son who was actually killed. He was shot to death. He had a son, Andre Jr., who graduated, and we saw Andre go to school on the show because I watched it. I loved the show when it was on. He went to school, and you saw him graduate and express how he moved to St. Louis to be by his grandmother to have a better life. And recently, I was shocked, just like many other people, who learned that the son that was in jail, who came out, was actually just arrested about 3 weeks ago for ordering a hit on his nephew. And the reason why? He took out a $450,000 life insurance on the nephew, and he worked with a young lady that he met, I don't know how, and he worked with an insurance agent who sold him the insurance on his nephew, and this kid was killed. And he went to try to collect the $400,000 policy, and the insurance company did not pay it out because they found it suspicious, and he could not provide some of the information that they were requesting.
Mm.
It is very suspicious when someone other than a parent or a spouse is taking out insurance on someone else. If a parent is taking out insurance on a child, there is a formula that is used to make sure that the child is not being overinsured based upon the amount of insurance that the parents have. So for example, if a parent has a $250 policy, they cannot take out a $500,000 policy on a child.
Mm.
Okay? So, but absolutely, positively, I think I know I do it with my clients. When a young couple has a child, I automatically say, okay, let's put an insurance in place. We're not going to put a term insurance because this policy is going to terminate. We are going to put a whole life insurance where you can have money grow, and the policy will grow with the child. By the time the child goes to college, the child might have $20,000 built up in the policy that will help with college expenses. So there is a difference in terms of what plans are used with children, but absolutely, I would definitely insure a child to make sure that that child has some protection as they get older in life.
And this is I asked you the question because I know when I pose this question to people, it's immediately the emotional element that makes people say no, because most people look at it as, I'm not going to, it's, how could you do that to your child? But again, when we talk about discernment, we're looking at things differently because we understand the benefit and what this is truly about. This is not about betting on, trying to benefit from your child. This is about providing a benefit to your child.
Correct. I mean, I still have a policy that my parents took out for me when I was a child. And the beauty of it, I don't have to pay a dime for that policy because that policy has enough funds in it that policy pays for itself.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, absolutely.
I think this is excellent, Rhonda, because sometimes when we are not using discernment, we tend to make decisions based on how we feel. So it's an emotional decision. I felt good about this, so I did that, or I felt bad about this, so I did not do that. And Rhonda, what I'm hearing you saying is it's kind of a reminder to us to look at information, be informed, have knowledge of the pros and the cons, and then with discernment, make your decision as to what path you will take.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's where we're going. Ladies, I have a question here, so we're going to stay with this conversation, and I think all of you can feed into this. It's directed toward Amina, but Sandra, you may want to add to this, maybe. Amina, the question to you is, what are some of the key factors to consider when you're choosing stocks? What are some of the key factors to consider when you're choosing stocks?
So I think it's really important that I distinguish between individual stocks and mutual funds. So when we talk about mutual funds, as opposed to stocks, stocks are one individual company. So for example, Google's supposed to split this week or this month or something, like supposed to split twice. And everyone's like, yo, I got to get money together for Google, blah, blah, blah. Unless you have a significant amount of money to put into that one stock, you're not really going to see the return that you think. In addition, when we talk about individual stocks, like for example, if I had all my money in Blockbuster, where is Blockbuster right now? There's one in Alaska, they turned it into a hotel, okay? When you have a mutual fund, what you are doing is you are getting pieces of a bunch of stocks. So let's say I did have Blockbuster, but I also had Target, Macy's, Walmart, Pepsi, Apple, Google. I'm getting a little piece of all of those. What is the likelihood that all of those companies are going to go out of business at exactly the same time? Highly unlikely. So when you invest in your 401k, your 403b, your 457, if you take part in the college plan, the 529, or a Coverdell, which is a great educational investment, it's $2,000 max that you could put into a year, 0 to 18 years. The investment can grow up to $100,000. You can also do an UGMA or an UTMA, which is a uniform gift to minors account. This is an account, I call it the grandparent account. Anyone that wants to give you money, go put it in there. But what you're really thinking about when you're trying to decide an investment is your time horizon and your goals. So a lot of times, like for me, I work in a school district. So the finance guys will come in, it'll be AXA and MetLife and Voya, all these companies that you're familiar with. And they'll sit down with you and they'll say, how much do you want to put in per paycheck? That's it. They never really ask you any more questions than that. And if you are a female, if you're a woman, on average, women work 9 years less than men because we are either taking care of children or parents. You add that into the corporate factor where Black women are receiving 64 cents to the dollar compared to a white man, we're making less money and we're working less amount of years. So when we're trying to make our choices about where to put our money, a lot of times the fear keeps us from getting the returns we deserve. We go, I don't want to lose any money. So they'll put you in something. I just had a client that they had a rollover. They had left for years she left it. It was earning under 1%. And she had it in that investment for like 15 years. It was earning under 1%. Now, can you retire making under 1%? No. You can put your money in the bank if you want to make under 1%. What we're looking at is if I have 20 to 30 years, I want to put my money in a Ferrari. So I want to look at growth stocks. Depending on what company that you're with, most companies have a specific line of growth stocks. Let's say I'm somewhere in the middle, like I'm maybe 10 years out from retirement. Then I want to put my money in an SUV. Those are bonds, things of that nature, things that are corporate backed or federally backed investments. They range about maybe 6%, while a growth fund, some of the growth funds that I work with are having a 14% return right now and consistently in the double digits. And that's even with the dot-com boom, 9/11, 2008, and what we're going through now, it's still earning double digits. Let's say I'm about 5 years from retirement. Then I need to put my money in a Brinks truck. So I want to look at the funds that are ranging about 3 to 4%, maybe 6% max, because that means they don't have a lot of high swings. When you see funds like that, they're usually invested in the big companies, the Apples, the Googles, the Chase, because those companies are so long-standing and so large that the flux in their returns aren't wild swings. While usually growth funds are in markets that are usually constantly changing. Technology. Right now, we all had to switch to Zoom. Zoom stock like tripled from what it was before the pandemic. Or pharmaceuticals, with all this new stuff going on with vaccines, you're starting to see uptick in that. So healthcare, technology stocks, those are usually growth. When we have that middle, like SUV, pretty safe, but still moving, those are usually bonds, typically, either corporate or federally backed. And then we want to take a look at the Brinks truck, the things that we know are tried or true. You're pretty much going to get like a minimum return, but you're maintaining your principal, which is super, super key. So when we talk about the market, a lot of people don't want to jump in because they are still thinking that they're going to lose. The places that you lose are places that are not giving you a proper return for what your goal is. If you're going to be working the next 30 years, getting 2% is not going to work for you, or getting 3% is not going to work for you. CDs, stay away from those. Because the thing that they don't tell you is that you're getting a 3% max, and then you got to pay taxes. That's what they don't tell you. Now, of course, when we talk about investing in your 401k, your 403b, your 457, these are perfect places to help you bring down your tax liability. Here on Long Island, that is something a lot of people have to deal with. They want to make sure that they're not paying a ton of money in taxes, so they put 5%, 10% into their 403b, their 401k, their 457, and that'll bring down their tax liability. You also get that with your 529. So if you have kids and you're still having, you're trying to work first, I'm not a tax specialist. I just know areas where there are some tax benefits. If you have a 529, that's also something that you can utilize in order to bring down your tax basis. So it's really based on your age. And I would not suggest investing in individual stocks unless you have a lot of money and you can sustain the swings. Unfortunately, there was like a story about this kid that was like $70,000 in a hole buying off puts, which is kind of like you're taking a loan on stocks in order to purchase stocks through Robinhood, which is an app that's been becoming very popular, where people are like, oh, I'm investing in the market and blah, 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 but they're not explaining anything to anybody. So it's really key that if you're going to put your money someplace, especially if you're a middle income person, mutual funds are your best bet. And you want to make sure that you're choosing based on your age. Don't talk to the person in the next cubicle, because they could have a totally different goal than you do. Make sure that you're sitting with a professional and going through your goals.
Amina, excellent, excellent, excellent.
Nora, can I just chime in on what Amina had to say? I so agree with everything that she said. I know that I get this, and Amina probably gets this too. You go to a family function or you go to an event and someone in the room knows that you're a financial advisor, and they automatically turn to you and say, what stock should I buy? We cannot look at you and say, go and buy X, Y, Z. Yeah. We have no information about you. We don't know what your risk tolerance is. We don't know how much money you have. We don't know your time horizon. So the question that came in is a typical question where, I smiled when you read it because I said this is just the typical question that is asked every time you enter a room when they know there's a financial advisor in the room. So you have to meet with someone who's a professional and let them do a full plan and answer some questions so that they can structure, some options for you to purchase and to invest. You can't just say, oh, tell me what the best stock is for me to buy, because what's good for me to buy is not what's good for you to buy based upon your needs.
Now, Sandra, I'm going to stay with you because even though I think that this next question may be another one of those questions, I'm going to leave it up to you and Amina maybe to judge. You guys hear it and see. And by the way, this is anyone on the panel can answer it. And the question is, what are the 4 pillars of financial security for anybody?
I would say just very quickly, you want to make sure that you have a strong foundation to your financial house, which is making sure that you have the proper income protection. That's super key. Doesn't matter what your age is. Like, I don't have any kids. I don't own a home, but you know what? I got student loans. I don't want to stick that with anybody. So making sure that you have, and then you want to get it while you're young and healthy, because there have been so many times where I was trying to meet with someone, and then a couple of months later found out they have cancer. Now they can't even get insured. So, while you're feeling good, while you're young and healthy, definitely take advantage of getting the proper insurance. The other thing is we want to have the 3-account system: short-term, mid-term, long-term. Short-term, 0 to 6 months of your expenses. Mid-term, I want to save up for a car, a big vacation, a home, 2 to 5 years. Whatever you want in 2 to 5 years, that's where you want to start putting for that secondary account. And then the last one is making sure your long-term account, which is your retirement accounts. I highly recommend, if you are making under 100 and I think it was like 19,000 adjusted gross income, and if you're a married couple making under $209,000 adjusted gross income, take advantage of a Roth. A Roth IRA is a game changer for the middle income market. It is a way that you can invest your money and not pay taxes on it when it comes time for retirement, which is typically 59 and a half. That's the investment retirement age. So by taking advantage of a Roth, you're still investing in the market. And instead of coming out of your paycheck, it comes out of your bank account. So you've already paid the taxes on it. So once you start socking that money away, when you get to retirement, that money is all yours. So if you have a 401k, 403b, 457, you partner that with a Roth IRA, the money that you lose in taxes in your 401k, 403b, 457, you make up with your Roth. And we know we live in a very expensive place here in New York and in Long Island. So the more money you have accessible to you in your retirement, the better. So that would be my 4 pillars. Sandra?
Yeah, I would agree. It's very important to make sure you protect yourself in terms of family emergencies. Make sure you have protection in the event of unforeseen illness so that your income is protected. So you want to make sure you have disability insurance, because if you cannot go to work for the next 3 months due to an illness or a surgery, something, you still have your mortgage to pay. You still have your cell phone bill to pay. You still have the kids' school tuition to pay. So you want to make sure you protect that income. You also want to make sure that you have the emergency funds in the event, again, things like this happen. Just like we're in a pandemic, a lot of people were caught short without an emergency fund and are having a very difficult time right now. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself and your family, having these emergency funds in place, making sure you're saving for retirement. It's very easy, and I can tell you, when an emergency happens, someone loses a job, someone is laid off, the first thing they do is they stop paying their insurance. That's the first thing they do, which is the wrong move to do.
Mhm.
Because if you stop paying that insurance and now you cannot go back to work and you're not getting an income, that disability benefit that would have been paid out to you, you stop paying that insurance and you're no longer going to be able to collect any income from that, that particular plan.
Excellent.
So it's the focus is to plan. Put something in place, because the longer you wait and you just say, I'm going to get to it, I'm going to get to it, I'm going to get to it, and you never get to it, something happens, and then unfortunately it's no longer available for you to get to.
Wow. Thank you so much. Excellent information. Well, this time has really gone like so fast. I can't believe it. At the end of our program here, I want to just kind of tie things together with a reminder that when we started this conversation, Rhonda gave us a definition of discernment. And I think that we have repeatedly seen examples throughout the discussion tonight where discernment was there, it was spoken about, it was referred to, it was implied. And so in closing, I just want to say that her definition is having the ability to sift through different types of information. Well, we've been hearing that. Consistent adversity and potential threats in life, which consistently are making while consistently making appropriate choices, rational judgments, and proper decisions that propel you forward with the steadfast purpose of improving your life and ultimately improving the world around you. Rhonda, that is the definition you have set on the table tonight. That is the message that we have been discussing and brainstorming about and kind of stimulating our own minds and thinking and reflecting on our own lives. Can you close out for us with some words of empowerment that kind of tell us, why did you even think that this is something that needed to be discussed at this point?
Sure. Thank you so much. And once again, thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks to all of our panelists for being here. And Nora, you did a wonderful job. So thank you for moderating this webinar. But yeah, see, the reason why I thought this was a very important topic in these specific areas is because, listen, let's face it, emotions are high right now, right? Whether it's going into a store with a mask, you have people who want to get into fights over going into a store with a mask. We have anxiety over the schools opening and how it's going to open, these different models that we're not used to. We have people who can't pay the mortgage, can't pay the rent. We have all these different concerns. We have people who parents and loved ones have passed away and they want to know, how do I get the house in my name? There's so many different things that are going on, and people are trying to sift through information they have, information they don't have, and trying to make the right decisions for themselves, for their families, and making sure that they are going to get out of this pandemic the right way. And so discernment is very important. Discernment is important, just generally speaking, before the pandemic, but even now more so because we have all these things that we're dealing with that we've never had to deal with before. And so again, we have to put things into proper perspective and understand that we have to make these decisions, but these decisions need to be the right decisions. Listen, discernment is not selfish. It's not. The decisions that you make when you're discerning affect not just you and not just your loved ones. They are decisions that are focused decisions, informed decisions. You may not have all of the information that you need, but you have the right information you need to make the right choices. That's how we need to start thinking. If we are not thinking that way, then we need to get on board and start to do that, whether we're talking about our health, our children, our finances, whatever the case is. There are ways that we can deal with this and we can come out on top, but we can't let emotions get to us. Listen, emotions are there. I'm not saying that we can't walk around like robots. I mean, that's not realistic. We have emotions and they're there for a reason, but we have to use them properly. And when we're making decisions, we have to make decisions on facts that are available, so that way we can make the right decisions for all concerned. And that's why I thought this topic was just very important, and that we needed to really talk about these issues today.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much to the audience. What a great night, ladies. Let's give ourselves a round of applause, you know, the virtual applause. Yeah. Yeah. What a great evening. And I think with that, we want to remind everyone, and everyone on the panel, please correct me if I'm wrong. We want to remind everyone that all of the information that has been shared here tonight can be sent to our audience. Yes, Rhonda?
Yes.
Okay, so please, pay attention to the information that you see on the slides. In many cases, it's an exact summary of some of the information that was discussed. And I know for myself, I was trying to do my job here that I agreed to do tonight, but I was trying to take notes, because this is information that I really can use, and I think many of us can really use to improve the quality for our lives and our families. So this information is valuable. Take it, and also look forward to what Rhonda has coming up in October, the podcast. The podcast, Rhonda, do you mind if I say?
Sure.
About the podcast? So the book is great, and you got to get the book, and it kind of continues with this conversation in more detail, that we've been discussing tonight. But the podcast is going to be the opportunity to carry on these discussions. As we've been speaking tonight, there have been certain times where I wanted to, go a little bit deeper on just one thing. Like somebody said something about being more humanitarian. This COVID-19 has subtle changes that are taking place. You change a little bit from being so self-centered to be more humanistic. I think it was Jennifer Ariana. But Jen, you know what I'm saying? We're changing from being so me to now us and we. If one of us doesn't make it, none of us make it. That kind of mentality. And the podcast will be the opportunity to have an ongoing or a deeper conversation about that. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I have the ideal of wanting to discuss things with my children and my grandchildren, my friends and my relatives, but I need to talk it over with someone else, another woman, somebody else that's in the same situation, and get the verbiage together so that when I speak to them, that communication piece, it happens in a quality manner. You can't just assume that because you're bright and you're intelligent that you know everything about how to communicate to a child about something like this.
Right.
Or how to change a whole cultural mindset about money, or how to change people's attitude about depression and mental health issues. So sometimes we need the verbiage, and we can get them in the podcast that will come out in October. And each session that we have, we can go into detail and learn and learn and learn. And one thing I will say about COVID-19, there's a pro and con, a yin and a yang to everything. It comes with the demand to be willing to learn and learn fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If like I said, when you think about what's going on, this is not the time for us to look at this pandemic as a negative and just let it stop our growth and our progress in life. No, there's opportunities to learn from what's going on and for us to move forward, maybe in a different way, but we can move forward and we can do it productively, but we have to be willing to change. We have to communicate. We have to shift some thinking in a lot of ways, but we can do it, and we can do it successfully, and we can do it even better than we imagined before. How about that?
Yes.
We can. We really can.
Yeah. And I'm watching the clock. I know the technical ladies are going to tell us our time is very short. one thing that I feel has to be put on the table is that there has to be a shift in the way that we trust other people and trust ourselves. I have to admit it, and a lot of people that I know need to admit that we don't know everything about how to connect finance to the quality of our lives. And I have to trust the people that are experts in that field and not believe that they're out to get me. Let's just put it out there on the table. Pick one, and then have faith and belief that this is going to be the right person that's going to be doing the right thing by you. You're going to learn. The decisions are going to be solid, and it's going to change the quality of life for you. You've chosen other things, some other things that weren't so nice. You didn't get mad at those people teaching you to go choose to be in a strip club. So take a chance on a lady that knows about fine. I mean, let's just keep it funky.
Right. No, absolutely. And to that point, no one's saying that you have to take everything that you have and just hand it over to someone blindly. That's not what we're saying. Because if I tell you I'm an attorney, when you come into my office, I'm going to ask you, did you actually look up to see if I'm an attorney? Did I get disbarred? Do I have any type of sanctions against me or anything like that? You still have to do your homework to make sure that the person that you're trusting to with whatever expertise it is doing what they're supposed to do, but let them do what they're supposed to do. So you have homework, you have to educate yourself, but let the people who need to do what they need to do their job. You have to have a level of trust. It's a must.
Excellent. Excellent. That's it. Any ladies, of the ladies that are on the panel, any last word? Any last word before the technical people give us the, what's that, the high sign of Nora, this is it? Any last words? Any last words? One last sentence here.
Thank you guys so much for having us. And to all the moms and dads out there with their kids going to school, we got this. I feel like that needed to be said. We got this.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Any last words? Come on now, Jen. You got to say something. I said some nice things. I got your name right now.
You sure did. Well, I mean, it's still, you got this. I went to work today. It was the first day we welcomed so many boys and girls in, and it was so exciting. And trust that the schools are welcoming and receiving and are planned and prepared for months for that special day. They were excited. We were excited. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful day in education today.
Excellent, excellent. Michelle, come on, give me something.
I would just like to say, just to remind everyone to pay attention to your body. You walk around with your body 24 hours a day. You know your body best. So if you notice anything different that wasn't there from the day before, make an appointment to see your doctor. That's the only way to stay healthy.
Great, thank you so much. Great advice. Sandra, where are you?
I'm right here, and just a quick word of thought here. September is Life Insurance Awareness Month. Take the first step. Don't be afraid. Just make the call.
Excellent, excellent. Ladies, once again, thank you so much for a lovely evening. Rhonda, thank you so much for making this experience possible for everyone online and for us, the panelists, as well. To our audience tonight, just keep in mind all the things that you've heard tonight and look forward to seeing us again in October. And anytime you hear the name of any one of these ladies on the panel, these are definitely women to be trusted. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great night, ladies.